Hello everyone, Matthew here, Maintenance Manager of Villa Lago Apartments. Today I want to go over a brief description of a three-way light switch with you. Before we get to the three-way light switch, let's look at a normal 120 volt single pole light switch. On a regular light switch you'll see two brass terminals. One is going to be line, one is going to be load. And on the other side you'll see there's no terminals at all. Also on a normal light switch you're going to be labeled on and off on the light switch. When it comes to a three-way light switch, first of all, you'll see there's actually three terminals. There's one dark, and then you'll have two brass terminals, one on each side. And there's no on and off labeled on the light switch, it's completely blank. Your two brass terminals at the bottom are going to be your traveler wires, and then the darker color terminal is going to be your line or load. Let's go into more detail about this and actually install two of these. Alright, here you can see we have a worst case scenario. My assistant attempted to replace a three-way light switch and got confused on which wires were which. Very common. That's one of the purposes of this video, is to show you how to determine what wires are what and install a three-way light switch. I'm located in a bedroom in a vacant apartment. I have the front door locked on the apartment, and I'm actually in the room with the breaker panel. I have the breaker off currently at the moment. I have full visibility of the breaker panel, so I will not be using lockout tagout, but anytime you're working with electrical, you want to be as safe as possible. If you can't see the breaker panel and you have other people in the area with you, always use your lockout tagout. Me being in a bedroom in a vacant apartment, there's two entrances into this room. I have the entrance directly off of the living room into the bedroom, and also have an entrance to the bedroom from a bathroom. That's when a three-way light switch comes into play. Any multiple entry exit points into a room that has a light fixture, you're going to find three-way light switches. You don't want to walk into a dark room from any side of the entry, so you'll have a light switch that controls a fixture in multiple locations. So let's get started. The first thing we have to do is determine which one of these wires is going to be our line coming from our breaker panel. There's really only one way to do that, and that is going to be separate all of your wires, make sure nothing is going to touch anything, and we're going to have to turn the breaker back on and energize the system. Let's do that, and I'll show you where we go from there. Okay, we have our breaker back on. The wires are live, proper PPE. I have leather gloves on. So now what we want to do is take our multimeter set to 120 volts. We're going to take one lead of our multimeter, place it on our ground wire. I'll try to get this where you can see. I have one lead on the ground wire, and now I'm physically going to touch my other lead to the other three wires and determine which one is my voltage, if one is at all. I'm not finding voltage on any one of these wires, so that's telling me that one of these wires is going to be my load, and the other two are going to be my traveler wires. So we'll need to go to the other switch to actually find our line. Okay, now we are at the other switch location, and we want to repeat the process until we find our line voltage. Again, the breaker is on, so safety is a must. Nothing there. We have voltage there and nothing on that wire. So we have determined that this wire is our line coming into our switch. So I'm going to move it in the up position and turn my breaker back off. Alright, now that we've located our line, what I like to do is, so I don't lose track of it again, I like to place a piece of tape around it. That helps me identify that this is my line wire, and it will go to the darker terminal on my new three-way light switch. Alright, now we are back at our original starting point, and now we need to determine which one of these three wires, red, and black, is going to be our load. We have already determined our line on the other switch. Now one of these wires is going to be our load going to our actual light fixture. So let me show you how we do that. All right, we're back at our second light switch, the one we determined where our line coming into the circuit is. That's this one here. So through the process of elimination, we've already determined that these two other wires are going to be our traveler wires, and they're going to travel to the other side. So in order to find my load on the other switch, all I have to do is, again, the breaker is still off. All I have to do is touch these two wires. I'm actually going to put a wire nut on them. That way they stay together. Because now I can go to the other switch and do a continuity test, find these two wires, and that'll give me my load. The one that's not showing continuity will actually be my load on the other switch. So let's go do that. All right, now we're back at our original switch location. We need to find continuity between two sets of wires. Again, we've got our multimeter set to continuity, which I'm using the tone. So when I hear that, I know I have my two correct wires. So I'm going to go ahead and start here and here. Right away I have continuity. Let's just double check. Make sure we don't have anything else touching. Okay. So I've determined this black and this red are my travelers. So that means this red is going to be my load going up to my light fixture on the ceiling. And also the same as I did on the other switch to find my line, I'm going to place a piece of tape on my load on this side so that I know it goes to the darker colored terminal on my light switch. Okay. So through the process of elimination, we've discovered our line and our load, and we've also discovered our two traveler wires. So now we're ready to wire up our switches, and everything should be good. Alrighty, now we're ready to wire up our switches. To confirm that our power is still off. First one I always like to start with is my line and load, the one that we labeled. And remember, line and load is always going to be your darker terminal on your switch. So let's start there and get it wired up. And now we can do our traveler wires. They're going to go on to the other two brass terminals. And we want these terminals good and tight, but not too tight. You can't over tighten and break the plastic on the switch. You want them good and snug. Okay, and finally our other traveler. And we can finish with our ground. Confirm we're good and tight. Okay. We'll repeat the process on our other three-way switch. Okay, now we're going to repeat the process starting with our, which we know this is our line side. So I'm going to start with that. Goes on the darker terminal on our light switch. And again, we want it good and tight, but do not over tighten. Okay. I'm going to place one of my travelers on the brass terminal. And finish it up with my other traveler on the other brass terminal. And finally our ground. Now we can install our switches back into their outlet box and test our work. Okay, we have our switches installed. We confirm there's no wires touching anywhere inside the box. So let's see how we did. And we do have the breaker back on. Hopefully you can see the light is working correctly. Let's go test the other switch. Okay, we're at the other entry point into the room. That one is working as well. Job well done. Thank you so much.